Most recent trip of Russian President Vladimir Putin to Beijing is, if I can call it, the most important visit so far, and particularly the joint declaration or the joint statement issued by the two countries during the visit has been well recognized, and I think its importance should not be underestimated because it's a major achievement in terms of our two countries' relations since. Russia and China, or the former Soviet Union included, has established diplomatic relations 75 years ago. So, as it is recorded in the document, the relations between our two countries have reached its all-time high. And also the importance of signing this joint statement by the two countries do suggest the shared vision of our two countries' leadership in terms of the current global or geopolitical reshuffling and reshaping. The world is not at a peace at the moment. There are so many conflicts, chaos, confrontations here and there. And I believe that we have reached to the stage that if something is not going to be done immediately, I think we are sliding into a very dangerous period in our history, because people are already talking about the coming Third World War. Global stability and regional stability is at stake. And I think this trip of Vladimir Putin to Beijing and its understanding reached with the Chinese leadership is quite important, because both countries have recognized that the biggest threat to world peace is actually the US hegemonic control, or its attempt to exercise hegemonic control over the world. And to some extent, I think the superpower, which is the United States of America, is being carried away too far, that they believe that they can do anything. So, and that has undermined the stability, and also threatens the interest of a lot of countries, because the interest, the core interest of every country and its security concerns of every country, big and small, needs to be respected. I think the US-led West, basically what we're talking about is the United States of America and Europe, and also including Britain, and also Australia, New Zealand, and then sometimes Japan and South Korea is also included. We call that the West. And then this group of countries are relatively better developed, in a sense, as opposed to the rest, which is a majority. So that's why we have this term, the West and the rest. The common term is Global South. And I know that in Russia, you also have this term, a global majority, as well. So here comes to the organization BRICS, because BRICS do represent a new group of countries All of these countries are actually from global south. They're all developing countries within which China and Russia and India, South America, South Africa, and also we have Brazil. But now with this enlargement, now we have 10 countries actually already with BRICS. So its enlargement is actually almost becoming unstoppable. So what does that suggest? All of these countries actually come from different parts of the world, and they all have different political systems with different religions and histories and cultural backgrounds. They're all different. But the reason for all of these countries to have come together, the main reason is that these countries are not happy with the way the world has been governed until now, because it's absolutely unfair to developing countries. So these countries have come together to form a united front. And I think Russia and China are being two of the founding members, actually, of the BRICS, and also the Shanghai Cooperation Organization as well, of which China and Russia are also founding members. These new upcoming global organizations do represent a new force to hopefully shape the future of our world, the direction of where we're heading towards. And as it's been very clearly spelled out in the joint statement by the two countries, it is not against the US as a country. It is against the hegemonic control of the world by the US. So it's the hegemony that both Russia and China are standing up to detest and to denounce. So that's a very important point to note. But also, I mean, the more important issues as well touched upon in this joint statement covers the economic development part of our two countries. So even though that the Western countries have given a lot of criticisms, even the US senior officials from the White House, Secretary Yellen and Secretary of State Antony Blinken, came to China just days and weeks before President Putin's arrival. And those American officials came to China actually to urge China to stop supporting Russia, and also to threaten that the US is going to impose more sanctions on China if Beijing doesn't live up to the expectations of the White House. So just days later, Russian president came to China, and the two countries have signed this joint statement. What does that suggest? It suggests that both China and Russia are resolved. The Americans have taken as being something like a kick in their teeth. But it's a strong message that is being sent out already, not only to the US, but to the whole world. Well, I think the joint statement itself is already very comprehensive, actually. It touches upon almost every aspect of our two countries' cooperation and partnership, ranging from cooperation in energy, in infrastructure. In terms of energy, the second pipeline, the Siberian Force #2 was mentioned as well, and also the port in Vladivostok and also Tumenjiang, that was also mentioned. And then the joint development of the Far East, basically, it opens up all the opportunities for the two countries to come together with joint hands to hopefully, develop the Siberian area in a much faster pace. So these have actually created a big platform for the two countries to work together. But what I would like to add is that in terms of actual implementation, yes, our two economies are complementary to each other. Russia has a lot of what China needs. And China also can produce and offer a lot of products that Russia needs. So that's why we say our two countries' economies are complementary to each other. But how to make things happen? I know things are happening, but how to make it, happen in a much faster pace and in bigger volumes. And that requires the joint effort of not only the state-owned companies of our two countries, but also all of the companies in the private sector. So the provision of services to facilitate trade transactions, that is going to be crucial. The people have been worried about the settlement mechanism, the banking services. We know that VTB Bank is already in China offering services, and there is also a Chinese bank that provides the settlement service as well, but it is not really publicly known. And so I think both countries still have a lot to do to help the enterprises, the businesses, and particularly the medium and small and medium enterprises to be able to trade with Russia. So we still have a long way to go. Yeah. Couple of points. First of all, I think, yes, the sanctions are there already, and the US and Europe have decided to decouple completely from Russia in terms of economic activities. However, there are still ways for European products to be sold in Russia. There are always ways, right? And also for Russian products to be sold out too. But I think we have to look at in a more, broader perspective. First of all, the war, whatever you call it, a special military operation, or the conflict in Ukraine, is not going to last forever. Somehow, the situation will change. Whether it's going to be a ceasefire or, an agreement, whatever, but the situation is going to get changed. Whatever we're experiencing right now is temporary. So it's a matter of looking at the things both in a temporary perspective and also in a long-term perspective. In terms of trade settlement, yes, Russia is out of the SWIFT system, but this de-dollarization process was actually kick-started by Russia. And it's now being adopted by a growing number of countries. A lot of countries in the Middle East are already settling their trade in renminbi already. And this adoption of local currency in bilateral trade is also going to become a norm in many instances. So I think for Russia, when it comes to Russia, if I may, speak quite freely, I think for Russia, it is now a matter of doing more bilateral trade and settle the trade, well, with a trade settlement in the local currencies of the country in question. So this is something that Russia needs to develop further. When it comes to India, okay, maybe you're going to settle it with India in their currency, or they accept your ruble or you accept their currency. And with China, it is either ruble or renminbi. So it's this bilateral arrangement. So this is something I think between the two country governments, or between Russia and each and every country government, need to work out. So when we come back to the question of settlement between China and Russia, it is not something that the individual companies can, there isn't much they can do. So that's why China needs to basically work out with Russia what are the banks, the corresponding banks between the two countries to facilitate the trade. Your question of companies fearing about the sanctions. Chinese government has actually made it quite open, both in the statement, in the joint statement, and also publicly in China, domestically, that normal trade with Russia is to be encouraged. It's not something that is frowned upon. China wants to enlarge its trade activities with Russia. So because this is helpful to Chinese businesses as well, and it's also going to help our friends and partners in Russia too. When it comes to military equipment, or what the West is calling dual use products, well, that's something that the Chinese government has a very clear standing, that China has a very strict regulation regarding the export of military-related products. And it's not something that every business is, all the small and private businesses are engaged in. So tell me, is this something that businesses and people in Russia are also quite concerned about? Taiwan issue is very much of a domestic thing, and this is what China wants the whole world to understand. Although people outside the country, and particularly from the West, are trying very hard to compare Taiwan with Ukraine. And in actual practice, the Americans are actually using Taiwan, trying to use it as a proxy as well. But this is exactly what China is trying to avoid. My personal belief is that China is not going to fall into the trap. China only reserves the right to take over Taiwan by force. But with that, China has the anti-secession law that spells out the red lines. Once these red lines get crossed, then China will take over Taiwan by force. In the actual document, it says by non-peaceful means. So what are the red lines? Number one is all the options of a peaceful reunification has been exhausted. But we're not there yet. We're not there yet. Until all the possibilities for a peaceful reunification has been exhausted. So that's number one. Number two, there is an extremely huge social chaos and disaster that becomes uncontrollable on the island. And number three, if Taiwan attempts to go for independence by taking actual steps, which quote unquote means referendum. If they dare to do a referendum, then they are crossing the line. Other than that, we're still talking. We're still talking because we don't believe that it is right and it is advisable for Chinese to fight to kill Chinese. No, we don't like that. So there are a lot of possibilities still for the mainland to seek a peaceful reunification. And actually, there are a lot of dialogues going on. China-US relations has been at its all-time low. As compared to the relation with Russia is all-time high. The relation has been, very, very problematic, and it's been extremely difficult. And now I think both sides have realized that it is very difficult for the two countries to come to terms. But the effort is still being made. One conclusion that both sides have reached is that we do not want an absolute decoupling. And the reason for that is because our two countries' economies are interwoven already to such an extent that a decoupling has become impossible. Because for the US to stop doing business with China, it's not going to work domestically in America because their economy is interwoven with ours already. So that's why batches and batches of US officials have come to China trying to explain that, yes, we want to, set up a guardrail in order to prevent the relations to go out of control and for our competition to develop into actual confrontations. But in actual reality, we have confrontations every day. So what China has been trying to convince the US is to seek coexistence. And this is also true in the joint statement between China and Russia when it comes to the topic of US. It's not to destroy America. It's not to replace America. It's to seek coexistence. So this is the whole idea. So I think as long as we all stick to this principle, we are not on the wrong side of history. Because sooner or later, we all hope that the politicians, the leaderships in America will come to their senses, that by keep sticking to their hegemonic control over the world, it's not going to work. It's not going to work anymore. So you have to recognize the rising of new and upcoming powers, like China, like Russia, like the European Union as well. You cannot bully the European Union like this forever. Everyone knows that the biggest victim of the conflict in Ukraine is Europe. The Americans want to bleed out Russia, but as a matter of fact, they killed two birds with one stone. So people are not happy. People are not happy. And, but, I mean, that being said, we still need to move forward. And that's why organizations like the BRICS have become popular. India is an upcoming power as well. Indonesia in Asia is also quite, important as a country in terms of its size and a population. And then for Asia Pacific to develop further, because the Asia Pacific region, at the beginning of this century, we always talked about the 21st century being the century for the Pacific. And why was that? Because we have the booming economy of China, we have Japan, we have Korea. Japan, Korea, China, all these countries, all these three countries are among the top 10 in the world. And now we have Russia joining. So of course, this region is going to be very important in the coming decades and even perhaps a century. So that's why I think we still need to be optimistic in the long run. Our famous Confucius saying is that all problems and difficulties that we are facing are temporary. I can see, I mean, in 2019, at the Valdai conference, I heard President Putin talking about the dream of developing a bigger or greater Eurasian partnership. I went to Moscow and also participated in another conference focusing on that particular topic. It's the topic of the Belt and Road Initiative and also the Greater Eurasian Partnership. So I think it's during that conference, I explained how the Belt and Road Initiative came into being in the first place and how it developed until today. Right now, yes, after 10 years, we already have over 150 countries joining and signing up on this initiative. But in the meantime, we also have I forgot off my mind the number of contracts that have been signed and amount of dollars involved. But I said, it doesn't have a political ambition when it comes to the Belt and Road Initiative to start with. However, for the Greater Eurasian Partnership, I said, when the concept was first conceived, there was the mission statement to counter the European Union. I know that this is no longer being used. It's no longer being used, right? So I said during the conference, during the Q&A session, I said, do you know how much money that is being spent every day by the European Union's headquarters? Every day, the daily spending, 450 million euros per day. It's a huge bureaucracy. Whereas China's Belt and Road Initiative is something more simpler. It's projects. You want to build an airport, a dock, a port? a highway, a railway. Yes, we can help you. You don't have enough fund? No problem. We will lend you the money. China doesn't have that much money to lend out all the time. But we learned from the World Bank, from the Asia Development Bank, from IMF, from the European Reconstruction Fund. All these are already there. So it's so easy. It's a very easy concept. So China came up with AIIB, Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank. So China took the lead and China took up 30% of the shares, and then all the other countries came on board because it's a very matured concept, like a development bank, basically. So now China goes to Pakistan and said, okay, let's help you to build a highway. Okay, fine. Do you have the money? No. Okay, we'll lend you the money. Come up with the financial projection, and let's see how many years the investment can be amortized. 30 years, 40 years, 25 years. Come up with a business plan. And then it's easy. But it doesn't have a geopolitical ambition. So that's why one after another, whether it's in Asia, in Central Asia, in Southeast Asia, in West Asia, in Arab countries, and in Africa, and now all the way to Latin America. It's not, it doesn't, doesn't have a geopolitical relevance. So that's something I think people have been talking about in Russia. And not that many people in China are willing to discuss about this. I think the Asian dialogue is by itself quite an important event. And it's not only an event, but also a venue that for not only experts to exchange their ideas and opinions about how Russia and Asia and the region, the greater region of a Eurasian continent, actually can come together to exchange their ideas, to debate, to talk, and to present opportunities, and to get the young people inspired as well.